Rivalries are the lifeblood of college football that keep the game engaging for plenty of fans. Most of the biggest rivalries are between two schools within the same state or within bordering states. However, there are some rare instances where rivals exist within the vicinity of a single city. In a typical rivalry game, it isn't uncommon to see fans or players having aggressive emotional outbursts. In fact, it happens multiple times every year due to the high level of emotion so late in the season. But when your rivals are located less than half an hour from you, the tensions are much higher since they won't be going anywhere after the game. These higher tensions can lead to something catastrophic on an athletic and community level. Thankfully, no rivalry game has been as disastrous as the 2006 matchup between FIU and Miami. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Miami and FIU as rivals? While Florida and Florida State are technically the main rivals for Miami, FIU serves as a lesser-known rival only because they reside in the same city. The students of both schools frequently visit or attend each other's parties, but the fan bases occasionally clash. Their meeting in 2006 was intended to be the first game in an annual series called the City Line Series. Miami, who was 4-2 that season, was heavily favored over FIU, who had lost all 7 of its previous games. FIU fans wanted nothing more than to get their first win over a powerhouse program like Miami. The game started like any other. There was a bunch of trash talk from both sidelines and things were starting to get a little chippy, but that's exactly what you would expect from a rivalry game. The first half saw the tension slowly rising as players were starting to get more physical as the game went on. After 7 combined penalties, Miami finally scored 2 touchdowns. The score after the second touchdown was 13-0. Both sides immediately started pushing and shoving each other, resulting in another unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. The officials broke up the shoving match so Miami could kick the extra point after its second touchdown. Upon the kick, the teams immediately started fighting, and this is where the chaos officially begins. Within just 10 seconds, the entirety of both sidelines were in the middle of the field with every player throwing punches at anybody wearing a different color jersey. Blood was spilling all over the field, and many players were hurt in the process. Several pieces of equipment were being used as weapons, and some players were being hit in the skull by swinging helmets. By this point, the fans were going wild as if they were witnessing a UFC fight, with "Let Them Play" chants ringing across the Orange Bowl's 51,000 fans. Both teams eventually returned to their respective sidelines, and the game entered a delay that felt like it lasted an eternity. The local police were called and entered the field in an attempt to restore order between the teams by escorting certain players off the field. While the police were in the stadium, they ended up arresting several fans who also engaged in a brawl in the crowd. The game was an absolute disaster. The referees spent nearly 20 minutes figuring out how to penalize both teams. 13 players were given 15-yard penalties, 8 FIU and 5 Miami players were ejected from the game. And to make matters worse, former Miami Hurricane Lamar Thomas was on color commentary for the game, and he had this to say.
Now the Metro-Dade police trying to restore order.
Now that's what I'm talking about. You come into our house, you should get your behind kicked. You don't come in the OB playing that stuff. You across the ocean over there. You across the city. You can't come over to our place talking noise like that. You get your butt beat. I was about to go down the elevator and get in that thing.
Thomas was immediately fired from Comcast Sports Southeast for insinuating violence. While the game eventually concluded with a 35-0 victory for Miami, the days following the game were anything but pleasant. 31 different players across both schools received a 1-game suspension by their schools and conferences. Miami indefinitely suspended 2 of their own players, them being Brandon Merriweather and Anthony Reddick, while the rest of the suspended players were forced to do community service and sit out in their game against Duke. This event also set the precedent for the zero-tolerance policy for Miami players, stating that any future players that engage in fights will be immediately suspended for the entire season. That same day, FIU indefinitely suspended most of their players in the fight as well. Miami's head coach, Larry Coker, stated, "I think that it'll affect the image of our program greatly, but in a positive way." He said, "I think that when you see the video and they see how well it was handled, they will be impressed with our players." Coker was fired from Miami at the end of the season, and many believe that his handling of the incident was why. I just want to take this time to say thank you for everybody who's been supporting the channel thus far. I know my first 2 videos kind of had a few technical audio glitches where my voice would only come out of one side of like any headphone listeners, which would cause a lot of weird like balancing problems. But as you can hear now, that has been completely fixed. I figured out what the problem with my setup was, so I'm looking forward to making more high quality videos in the future, and I thank everybody that has stuck through and listened to my first 2 videos. If you haven't seen those, I highly recommend them. Just take that into consideration. I have one that is about the history of national championships in college football and how the national champion has been decided through the original method in the AP era, the BCS era, and currently the college football playoff. I also have another video that is about the biggest blowout in college football history. That is between Georgia Tech and Cumberland, where Georgia Tech defeat Cumberland 222-0. Check out that video if you have not. And I also want to just say, make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe for more college football content. When you subscribe, there's a little bell icon next to that. Make sure you hit that so you can get all of the latest updates on this channel and get notifications whenever a new video drops. I'm the Pigskin Parrot, and thank you for watching.
Lamar. John Petty's extra point is up and good, and another melee on the field. This one is getting out of hand. Flags all over the place, and this is ugly. Very ugly.